What if the last resistance to one of the world's most powerful authoritarian regimes wasn't an army, but a monk? The story of the Dalai Lama isn't just about spirituality. It's a geopolitical thriller. A tale of exile, protest, and a struggle for identity that has lasted over half a century. At the heart of it all, a soft-spoken man in maroon robes, who became China's most persistent symbol of defiance. In 1950, while the world was still recovering from the ashes of World War II, Chinese troops marched into Tibet. Officially, Beijing called it a peaceful liberation. But to the people of Tibet, it was an invasion. An ancient kingdom with its own language, culture, and Buddhist traditions was suddenly declared part of Mao Zedong's communist revolution. At the time, the Dalai Lama was just 15 years old. Revered as the spiritual and political leader of Tibet, he was thrust into a world of negotiations, threats, and quiet resistance. Beijing offered him promises of autonomy, on paper. In reality, Chinese officials began dismantling Tibetan institutions, sending soldiers into monasteries, and tightening control. By 1959, things exploded. A massive uprising broke out in Lhasa, the Tibetan capital. Tens of thousands of Tibetans surrounded the Dalai Lama's palace, desperate to protect him from rumored plans of abduction by Chinese forces. The protests were crushed brutally. Thousands were killed. And the Dalai Lama, disguised as a soldier, escaped across the Himalayas into India. That moment, his escape into exile, became a turning point not just for Tibet, but for the world. From his new base in Dharamshala, India, the Dalai Lama became more than a religious figure. He became a global icon, a living reminder of a culture under siege. As China rose economically and politically, Tibet faded from headlines, but the Dalai Lama never stopped speaking out. He didn't call for war. He didn't incite violence. Instead, he spoke of compassion, nonviolence, and the middle way, a proposal that Tibet remain under Chinese sovereignty, but retain real autonomy to preserve its culture, religion, and language. But Beijing saw even that as separatism. The Chinese Communist Party labeled him a wolf in monk's robes. Inside Tibet, merely owning his photo could lead to imprisonment. Monasteries were destroyed. Monks were re-educated. And yet, the resistance never fully disappeared. Tibetans inside and outside the region began staging protests, hunger strikes, and self-immolations, acts of desperate protest that shocked the world. Since 2009, over 150 Tibetans have burned themselves alive, calling for freedom and the return of the Dalai Lama. Their voices echo even as global powers remain silent, fearful of offending Beijing. Meanwhile, the Dalai Lama aged. He won the Nobel Peace Prize. He met with presidents, popes, and celebrities. But time kept moving. And with it, a terrifying question emerged: what happens when the 14th Dalai Lama dies? In Tibetan Buddhism, the Dalai Lama is reincarnated. But China has declared that it will choose the next one. Yes, the atheist Communist Party of China has insisted that it alone has the right to identify the next spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism. The irony is staggering and dangerous. Because for many Tibetans, the Dalai Lama isn't just a man. He is the symbol of their nation, their survival, and their refusal to disappear. If China installs a puppet Dalai Lama, and the real reincarnation is hidden or silenced, it could spell the final erasure of Tibetan autonomy. And yet, the struggle continues. Young Tibetans in exile are finding new ways to resist, through music, art, activism, and social media. The old world of monasteries is now linked to the modern world of Twitter, protest marches, and UN forums. The message remains the same: Tibet wants dignity, identity, and the right to exist. The Dalai Lama once said, "Our prime purpose in this life is to help others." And if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them. For decades, he has asked for dialogue. China has responded with silence, or worse, repression. But history has a strange memory. Empires rise and fall. Regimes grow paranoid. And sometimes, it's not the loudest armies that shape the future, but the quietest voices. If you found this hidden chapter of modern history powerful, subscribe to Trivia Tales. Because the stories you weren't told are often the ones that matter most.